So our key findings, they revealed that there were challenges in the different departments in how they coordinated their work in relation to COVID-19. And the biggest question is whether the funds allocated nationally were able to filter down to the lowest levels where people were increased the risk of abuse and we found. And that has been shown in many respects to a limited coordination strategy, because the National Treasury did not really coordinate the work of the government departments and also in all spheres of government, being national, provincial and local government. So it's difficult to measure or conclude whether the spending at national level adequately addressed. Our findings were that although the Department of Employment and Labour did introduce that temporary employer relief scheme, subject to misuse and misappropriation by many employers. Some of the employers took the money and it never reached the employees. Others reduced the amount of money that they allocated to the employees and increased their own benefits in terms of maximizing their profits in the process. So that issue posed a serious example. When TERS started, it started and focusing mainly on only South African citizens, without considering your asylum seekers, your foreign nationals. There were those employers who were misappropriating the funds. We called upon the Department of Employment and Labour to institute an investigation. There was an investigation that was instituted, and of course, some employers you would have heard in the media were found guilty. Others, the monies were withheld, and then employees were asked to call for the monies directly from the department instead of going to their employers, because their employers did not give them the necessary support. And we are pleased, of course, by the action that was taken by the Special Investigation Unit to investigate those employers, because they were exposed, some were arrested, some were fined, which to us is a good step. And you would understand that as reported by Advocate Andy Motibi, the head of the SIU, in the Parliamentary Monitoring Group, on his report on the 17th November 2021, that during the investigations, they dealt with undue payments accordingly. Where it was appropriate, they followed the civil route, and we commend them for that. And so, in terms of the Department of Social Development, well, you would understand that we've got people who stay in rural areas and peri-urban areas, and those people who stay in urban areas. Our findings were that those in rural areas and peri-urban areas encountered far greater challenges than those who stay in urban areas in terms of access. We were expected to register online. Some people in the rural areas don't have access to internet. They don't have access to smartphone to be able to access the monies. And well, we acknowledge that the special COVID-19 social relief of distress grant provided vital support to more than 10 million unemployed and vulnerability among poor households. And the grant and caregiver allowance were especially successful at reducing poverty and inequality. The Department of Social Development admitted that SASSA, the people who were eligible to receive them, with NGOs and other government agencies stepping up to provide food to an estimated 3 million people. SASSA contributed less than 10% of all food parcels delivered during lockdown. So, in terms of our recommendations in relation to some economic relief packages should be developed and supported by appropriate policy and regulations to ensure that comprehensive response is initiated from the start. We shouldn't wait for another disaster to strike. We have learned that disasters don't give notification. Disasters come. We don't have to run around reprioritizing budgets, cutting budgets that were allocated for other things in order to. Government should explore a possible disaster fund managed by an independent multi-sectoral body with a multi-sectoral and intersectoral structure that prioritizes a comprehensive governance approach should be established and government spheres. This will promote transparency and accountability for decisions taken. That's what we are raising. And in the context of any future disasters and shocks, procurement processes should be relaxed, relax procurement practices, and allow people to go on as they please. Because we have seen that many people have enriched living those procurement procedures, and it allowed many people to misuse the system. We hope that our recommendations will assist government and all stakeholders to be more prepared for immediate and future disasters. If you want to look at this in details, what I've just reported in details, you can refer to our document, The Pulse, on page 2. Then we come to the performance of the Commission on Land Restitution, on restitution of land rights. Our investigation came up with also findings and recommendations. Restitution have resulted in huge calls by some scholars and politicians for the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. And we would also remember that in response to these calls, on the 25th of June, to initiate and introduce legislation amending Section 25 of the they called that commission the Section 25 Ad Hoc Committee, and expropriation of land. However, on 7th of December 2021, the National Assembly was unsuccessful in achieving a 2/3 majority to pass that bill into law. This is beyond our scope as the Public Service Commission, but we thought that we need just to. Section 25 of the Constitution is the problem. Because our findings suggest that the proposed amendment that engulf the challenges of land redistribution. We will refer to them as the Commission and the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. They wholly underestimated the sheer scale of land restitution process. This results in numbers to claim for their land. And there was no study that was conducted in terms of how many people before it was initiated. It's only after that we came to realize that there's a lot of people meant the true intent of Section 25.7 of the Constitution and the Restitution Act. The Commission, that is now your Restitution Commission, has the legislative mandate to legally administer the land restitution process in respect of Section 25. However, like many departments and entities, the Commission has been beset with significant performance challenges, resulting in the delay of the settlement and finalization of the claims. The original target deadline for the settlement and the finalization of all land claims that were lodged by the cut-off date of 31 December 1998 was 2005. And when the deadline of 2008 came, there was no conclusion, and the target date was shifted to 2011, which was again shifted to 2012. So you may see that because of underestimating, and as at March 2018, there were 5,757 outstanding old order claims. Panel reviews that have attempted to diagnose the challenges afflicting the land restitution program and the commission. They have been largely parochial, and as a result stopped short of identifying the actual root causes. In its study, the Public Service Commission unpacked the performance of the Commission by focusing on 6 determining factors to the organizational performance. Those factors are: 1, the legal and regulatory framework; 2, the organizational structure; 3, the responsiveness to the need, adherence to the constitutional values and principles; and 6, leadership. In the research study is that the Commission has historically performed poorly in all these factors, the 7 factors that have been mentioned. The 6 factors that have been mentioned. Since its establishment, it has struggled to settle and finalize land restitution claims, have had to face the inadequate record management of land claims resulted in incomplete files. This compromises the legitimacy of the entire restitution process and needlessly delays the finalization of land claims. In a study conducted by Genesis Analysis in 2014, it was found in a random sample of claimant files, and only 3% in these same provinces were found to have been in order. So you can imagine those delays just of the documentation alone. Furthermore, even though the Office of the Valuer General was established in 2015, there have been extreme delays in the proper valuation of land under claims, and claimants are often not properly informed about what the valuation outcome is when the settlement offer for the final compensation is made to them. There is no doubt that the Commission has the unenviable task of resolving at times very complex land restitution claims, but its task remains a rationally simple one in legally determining the existence of valid claims and whether the land or equitable redress. This requires the Commission to properly engage with land claimants, to understand the history of land claims, to assess the actual remedy that land claimants seek, to provide regular progress report the legislative prescripts. Unfortunately, the Commission evolved into an institution where its performance did not meet the high expectations of its mandate. This is attributed in part to the Commission's inability. Underperformance of the Commission are summarized as follows. 1, the indecision by the Commission on the interpretation of legal and regulatory framework from which it needed to operate when weaknesses were such that it was never able to recover. The predominant narrative that emerged during the CODESA negotiations in the 1990s, that land restitution was only, as well as the government's initial understanding and operationalization of it, further suggests that the work of the Commission was compromised from the outset, and it's to each and every land claim without any undue interference is a further stumbling block. We are of the view that the Commission needs to be afforded its independence so that it does its work without fear, favor, or prejudice. That is our view. Number 4, the duality of the Commission is independent but subject to the Director General of the Department of Land Affairs. Now that the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development as the accounting officer means that the Commission has very little control over its human resources and budget. This simply means that the Commission depends on the goodwill of the Director General to be able to do its work dealt with. 5. Amendments to the Restitution Act in 1999, which empowered the Minister of Department of Land Affairs to administratively settle land claims order, created the unintended consequence of further subjugation of independence of the Commission, as well as compromising the integrity of the restitution process through the differential treatment of land claims, which meant that the Minister could, without consulting the Commission, without interacting with the Commission, on his own discretion, do and exercise those powers. So that was also another challenge that we faced. The other one is the absence of proper business plan because of indecision around the interpretation of Section 25, subsection 7 of the Constitution, resulted in that are pressures to chase numbers rather than to realize the rights of land claimants. Than those in authority would like to acknowledge. But the real victims are the land claimants, who have placed their rights in the Bill of Rights. From the findings, it is clear that the central to any performance improvement of the Commission is the review and the revision of the fulfill its mandate without fear or favor, whilst maintaining a cooperative relationship with the Minister referred to as the Minister. And to this extent, our study recommends the following: that a review and amendment of the Restitution Act must be undertaken to make it consistent with Section 25 Management Act. That the amendment of the Restitution Act must make it explicit that the Commission must function as an independent entity, and that such functioning must be completely separate from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. That the amendment of the Restitution Act should allow the composition and structure of the Commission to resemble other similar or related entities, such as the institutions supporting democracy, with properly delegated staff, which should include a chief executive officer. And finally, a review of the policy guidelines on the standard settlement offer must be undertaken as to determine whether it was consistent with Section 25, subsection 7 of the Constitution and the jurisprudence of courts. So the research study report was submitted to the Commission and to the Ministry. Refinalized the report, which we subsequently submitted again yesterday to the Minister and to the Commission. So they are in possession of this report, and this was considered apposite given the importance of the study and the necessity to promote dialogue, transparency, and collective problem solving. In general, both the Commission and the Minister received the report favorably and were eager to constructively engage on the substantive content and to find suitable solutions to the problems that exist in the land restitution program. The report is a 4-page report that is found from page 6 to page 10 of the PALS bulletin. we cannot accept a situation where government departments still continue to delay payments to service providers for services that have been provided to them. We have realized that in some instances, instead of paying, they want to investigate the source of the contracts. And we want to reiterate our call that it is not their responsibility. They need to pay suppliers for the work that has been provided. The investigation of the source of contracts can be done, but people must be paid for the work that they have rendered to the departments. So our country continues to experience challenges because of the weak economy, and it was worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, the July 2021 unrest, you remember, the floods that were there in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, parts of the Eastern Cape, parts of the Free State and parts of the Northwest, and even more the challenges of ESCOM that are persistent. The small, medium and micro enterprises, which play a pivotal role in government's efforts of job creation and poverty alleviation, have been the worst affected by these disruptions, as their operations rely mainly on the availability of cash flow reserves, resulting in some closing of their business. So this non-payment of service providers has resulted in some businesses having to close down. Others have not been able to pay their taxes so as to remain tax compliant, and they have been played out of business because of the non-payment. This ultimately had a knock-on effect on the unemployment in the country and impacted in people's livelihoods. The latest statistics released by Stats SA in their quarterly labor survey that was published on the 29th of March 2022 found out that the unemployment rate was at 35.3% in the fourth quarter of 2021, which was the highest since 2008. It is with this context that in discharging its constitution, which is something that must be condemned with the contempt it deserves, because that shows lack of accountability. On the other hand, departments such as transport and government communications and information systems did not submit monthly reports for January and February 2022. That should not happen, and we must make sure that all reports are submitted in time. The above-mentioned departments are the repeat defaulters for non-adherence to the submission deadline of the monthly report in comparison to the previous quarter. So those departments need to improve. Now, the other graph that we have shown in the pulse on page 12 reflects the work of the provinces, the payments of service providers by provinces. The Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Northwest, KwaZulu-Natal and Northern Cape are the top 5 main contributors to non-payment of suppliers as at the end of fourth quarter. At the end of March 2022, the Eastern Cape had 34,585 invoices at a cost of 3 billion plus, compared to the 24,887 invoices at a cost of 2 billion at the end of December 2021. Been smuggled out of business due to non-payment in these instances. At the end of March, Gauteng recorded 15,309 invoices at the cost of 1 billion. It's 1.7 billion, at the end of March 2022, compared to 5,550 invoices at a cost of 1 billion at the end of December 2021. So the number increases there as well. Northwest, at the end of March 2022, compared to the 5,296 invoices at a cost of 416 million at the end of December 2021, which was another increase. Such a high amount owed to suppliers at 153 million 601,137 rand for 8,498 invoices. Rated cost of that number has ballooned, and we have a responsibility to engage the provincial government. They have exception reports to the National Treasury by due date, and non-compliance with the 30-day payment provision of the PFMA show the lack of effective internal control systems and consequence management by departments and provinces. This also shows a total disregard for President's directive of November 2019 at the South Africa that any non-compliance force accountability. So there should be consequence management for such actions, especially in the 4 grievances handled by the Public Service Commission. Up to the end of March 2022, we registered 558 grievances, including 158 grievances that were carried. That constitutes 25% of those. And 418, which is the 75%, were properly referred. Grievances which were not properly referred are those that were either being dealt with elsewhere, such as the bargaining councils, and those that are still not finalized in the departments, where employees decide to panic and submit their grievances to the Public Service Commission without having received feedback from their departments. The PSC is concerned about the continued referral of grievances outside the provision of the grievance rules. On an annual basis, employees are workshopped on these rules. Unions are also called upon to play an active role in assisting their members in lodging grievances. And where the time frame for lodging grievances has lapsed, advised to the PSC, approximately 95% are referred by employees, and only 5% are referred by executive authorities. Referral of grievances by employees is an indication that departments have failed to resolve their grievances internally within the prescribed timeframes, which is another matter that to prevent grievances from emerging where possible, because you don't sleep and wake up with a grievance. We call on departments to work very hard to ensure that they prevent some of the grievances from emerging. In terms of the complaints that were handled by the Public Service Commission, as we all know that the mandate of the Public Service Commission is to investigate either of its own accord or on receipt of any complaint, and the personnel and public administration personnel practices relate to, for example, irregular appointments, transfers, qualifications, and compensation-related allegations. Public administration practices relate to, for example, procurement, irregularities, and poor service delivery. So those are the areas that we as the Public Service Commission investigate. Cases of alleged corruption received by the Public Service Commission through our National Anti-Corruption Hotline in the 2021-2022 financial year, as at 31 March 2022, total to 701,227 calls that were recorded in our case management system. These include dropped calls and those which were made for the purposes of inquiries and seeking advice. A cumulative figure of 25,100 case reports were generated and referred to the departments and public bodies and entities for investigation. During the fourth quarter of 2021-22 financial year, the Public Service Commission recorded a total of 597 cases, as shown on Table 4 on page 17 of the bulletin. These cases are slightly higher than the 347 cases received in the third quarter and the 282 received in the second quarter of the same financial year. There has been a slight increase in the reporting of cases through NAG. This may be due to increased awareness of legislation relating to the protection of whistleblowers, such as the Protected Disclosures Act, thus instilling confidence in the process and outcomes of blowing a whistle. We also made a reflection on the Public Service Commission seminar that was held in April. On Tuesday, the 26th of April 2022 in Pretoria. The event, held in partnership with the University of South Africa and the Moral Regeneration Movement, brought together members of the executive arm of government, academia, constitutional bodies, law enforcement agencies, and public servants to engage on what is needed to be done and build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. The event was graced with the presence of the Premier of the Northern Cape, Dr. Zamani Sol, who provided a very profound keynote address on ethical leadership. Dr. Sol condemned corruption in all its forms and called for concerted efforts for the transformation of the public service to build a capable, ethical development. The seminar webinar was a resounding success. The deliberation clearly spelled out a way forward that will restore public trust and confidence in our government and its capacity and capability to fight fraud and corruption. Some of the recommended actions include the swift action, strengthening of law enforcement capacity through further training and specialized courses in the investigation of fraud, money laundering, racketeering, independent from any political influence or otherwise. To synchronize efforts and policy framework to ensure protection of whistleblowers against all forms of reprisals and victimization. The ethics management function must be institutionalized in the public service, not as a compliance checklist, but to ensure that the ethics is in the way we do business in the public service. We also agreed to conduct a survey on the ongoing basis to gauge public trust and confidence in the public service. That will be found on page 23 of our Pulse Bulletin. Our upcoming events, the PSC's in-depth analysis of government response in relation to the recent floods that affected KZN and some parts of the Eastern Cape and Northwest will be included in the next edition of the Pulse. Those posts have been finalized. There's commissioners have been appointed, and we short only of one commissioner that is still outstanding. So we want to really commend and welcome the swift action by the presidency after we had an engagement with them to fill those positions. In the spirit of improving service delivery to address the needs of the citizens and restore trust in government, the Public Service Commission will embark on a countrywide intervention which plans to conduct citizens' forums in all 9 provinces. In the Northwest Province, these citizens' forums will be shared in the Pulse Bulletin quarterly in terms of the amount of work we have done. For having come and listened to us delivering the Pulse. It is out on publication. You can find of the Pulse. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Got questions? Let me just check with Taki. Do we have any questions online, Taki? We don't have questions online. I see Thabo is here from Power. We'll probably have interviews after we close the media briefing, and we don't have any questions here on the house. Okay.
Thank you. There's a question from Ebo from Business News. Regarding the non-payment of government suppliers, particularly SMME, what is the main cause of non-payment for SMME, and what effect in the view of the PSP contributes to the recovery of the economy? And what does the PSP recommend in order to remedy this issue?
So it's both the opportunity to respond. So it's the causes of non-payment and remedies. Over to you, Commissioner.
Own observation as the Public Service Commission is that the non-payment of service providers is sheer mischief from some accounting officers. Because you find out that accounting officers, in some instances you find out that some of the invoices, SMMEs submit them to supply chain, they go that process, and some of the individuals in supply chain, notion of people being corrupt to the core. They even want a share of a 50,000 payment. They want to get something in order to process a 50,000 payment, which is how deeply entrenched corruption is. So, what do we recommend as a remedy to that? We recommend that stern action should be taken. Accounting officers must know what is happening in their departments. You can't sit with an accounting officer who says, I do not know where this invoice is. It's not on my table. If someone inquires from the accounting officer, it is the duty of the accounting officer